All right, welcome back to Blue by 90. I'm Justin, joined by Tanner today, and we have our good friend that has agreed to come on again with us. So we're thankful. Jonathan Jacob Butt. Is that the government name?
It's actually Jonathan Dwayne. Jake's not my name at all. So it's a fun fact.
There's no
Fun
Jake
fact.
in it at all. Wow.
It's
All right.
Jonathan Dwayne.
There you
Yep.
go.
Yeah.
All right.
So,
My
Well,
dad said Jake. My mom wanted to call me Jake. My dad said Jake was too casual to put on a business resume. So he said the legal name needs to be Jonathan Dwayne. We'll call him Jake. And the funny thing is, because I played football and now I work in sports media, I've never made a resume. So my goal now is I would rather die than have to make a business resume at this point in my life. Like I'm committed. I'm coming up on 30 years old. The goal is to never make a business resume now for as long as I live.
it's not the
Fun
most fun
fact.
thing in the world to make,
did they know?
Exactly.
Yeah. Did they also know that your last name was Butt, so nobody was going to pay attention to your first name at all anyway? Like,
That's a good point. Well, here's the other thing. So my mom is Margaret Ann. Okay, so Margaret Meg is short for Margaret. Meg, middle initial is A. Megabutt. So we just kind of leaned into it, like it's best to
I
lean
love
into it.
that.
You guys know I just got married, and everyone was asking my wife like, "Are you going to hyphenate it?" And she's thankfully said no. It's just better. You don't want to half-ass it, no pun intended. You just want to just take it and go for it.
I like it. I like it. College football season is upon us, which means we're probably going to be seeing a lot more of you. Not that I wasn't seeing less of you here because I follow you on Instagram as well. You do awesome videos there. So for anybody listening, go check that out. But back in the studio at BTN, calling games here. Quite the eventful 2023 season for you specifically as a Michigan alum, watching that program and probably having to be like, you're put in an awkward position, I imagine, a lot of times through that last season where like everyone's like, what's going on? How many people were texting you, calling you, or trying to ask you behind the scenes, like, dude, is Stallions real? Like, what's the deal there? Like, that had to be all season long, didn't it?
Oh yeah, totally. And then the whole Harbaugh, like, is he gonna leave or is he gonna stay? And I'm just like, guys, I don't even think Sarah Harbaugh knew what Jim's intentions were. Like that's just exactly who that's how he is. So it certainly makes it a memorable season. And the good thing is I think it was Charlie Baker, the president of the NCAA. He even said, like, listen, this was a legitimate title, and we can't, it'll never be taken away. So that Stallions documentary is getting ready to drop. That's going to be really interesting, though. So I'm sure that one's going to do big time numbers on Netflix.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's it's gonna be, they're just gonna reopen all the different things that we somewhat put to bed last year. But I mean, okay, going back to last year too. Okay, Stallion stuff aside, Harbaugh suspensions aside, where does that team rank for you? That 2023 Michigan football team, where does that team rank for you all time? I mean, you were pretty close to the program. You were able to be in Shem a lot, I'm sure. You called a couple games. You know, you look at the JJs, the Blakes, the Mikey Sainer-Stills, you could go on and on. Where do those guys stand in Michigan football history?
Just right off the bat, you say they're definitely in the conversation for greatest Michigan team of all time. Like we can agree that if you wanted to pick 3 or 5, whatever the number is, you'd have to include them. 15-0 national champs. It's harder to win now than it's ever been, and it's harder to go undefeated now. But I think it's kind of like fine wine, where like in time, those things that are really special get better. Like as we zoom out a little bit, and as we watch Mikey Sainer still have a great career, and once JJ overcomes this knee injury and shows what he's capable of, I think Blake's going to be phenomenal. Some of those guys that were on that roster now going to the NFL, we'll see how special that team was. I think in time, they're going to be one of the great, not like the early 2000s Miami, not like 2019 LSU. I get, but I think that's one of the great teams of all time. And part of that is just the specialness of their character, their culture, understanding the transfer portal environment we live in and the NIL. And, just we've all talked to those guys, just special dudes. Seriously, even the off field stuff, like it's not football, but when you're talking about the word greatness, the impact those guys had on their community, man, it really was a special season. And they'll always have a special place in my heart.
Jake, what are your thoughts on this year's team going through a coaching transition? You went through one yourself in college, going from Brady Hoke to when Jim Harbaugh came in. This one, a little more continuity in place for the 2024 Michigan team. But what are your thoughts on, being over at Shem here recently and the guys that are stepping into those leadership roles, and maybe some of those guys that are looking to take that next step, maybe moving up to two deep with some of the guys that have, been recruited over the last couple of years, or maybe some of the new transfers too?
Man, I just think culture is a huge piece of this. In culture, the Lions are a great example of, changing culture leads to wins. When we went from Brady to Jim, like Jim ran us into the ground, but we changed our culture. And, that was a beautiful thing. And I say that because there isn't a pressing need for the culture's in place. And now Sharon's got the challenge of, he has to make this his. Like, he has to make it. He can't try to be like Jim. He's not trying to be like Jim. But the culture's in place, and he wants to protect that too. Run the ball and play defense. I mean, oh my goodness, that defense is absolutely loaded, and maybe in some ways could be better. That as good as Mike Barrett and Junior Colston were, I know they're really excited about Jayshon Barham and Ernest Hausman. Like, that's the challenge for those guys. Can they be even better? That entire D line is an NFL defensive line. You got the best corner. So the defense is going to keep them in every game. The question is, as we all know, I mean, it's no mystery, they got to play Fresno State week 1, and we're going to see who the starter is. And the goal is for whoever that is to play a really, really clean game, because the season is going to be set on course when they play Texas. That's when we'll find out about the culture. That's when we'll find out about Sharon Moore. That's when we'll find out about what this team's really made of. And that's kind of one of the fun things, too, is, it was late into the season, Penn State, when we really got to learn about that Michigan team last year. We don't have to wait. We're going to know very early on.
I love it. Yeah. And it's a little bit throwing these guys into the fire, including Sharon, because usually you have 3-4 cupcakes, quote unquote cupcakes, at the beginning of the year where you can figure that stuff out. They got to figure that out quickly. And I think sometimes that can be like, all right, well, let's just go ball. We're not thinking about anything. We're not going back and forth. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, because, you have no option but to just go and play. And I think that, for the quarterback position here, obviously we won't know until game 1. I think Sharon's probably going the Harbaugh route of like, not, we're not going to know until he trots him out on, that first series there. Meanwhile, Ohio State today just named Will Howard their starter, on August, 15th, right?
Yep.
So talk a little bit about the difference there in naming your starter early, and then what does it do for competition? Is there something to are there negatives around not knowing who that starter is up until game 1?
Yeah, I mean, a big piece of the quarterback is it goes beyond throwing the ball. It's leadership. And the quarterback should want to seize the team and seize the huddle. And that's the biggest advantage to me in naming a starter early, is you're saying, this is your team. The risk is, if you name them, you can't go back, because you don't want to, flip-flop. And if it's a close battle, you have to play the game that's being played by Sharon right now. But I also think you can't just say that as an absolute. You have to look at the character of the guys in the room. And man, you talk to Orgy, you talk to Davis Warren, you talk to Tuttle. Again, I go back to the culture that we talked about, just generally speaking. This team is mature, and they understand what's at stake. And they know, I'd imagine for the defense is going to take the field every time, saying, guys, put any of them in. Put any of them in. We're not giving up a point. We're going to win every game. And then all of a sudden, you're hoping that, one of these guys steps up, or a few of them step up. So It's, to me, what's really interesting in this is I think Orgy plays regardless. I think Orgy's going to have packages regardless. I just wonder how Sharon is evaluating this because, on one end, to that note, you say, man, we are going to be in every single game with that defense. Sharon Moore saying that. Maybe Orgy, I don't know. Maybe they look at Orgy as a high risk, high reward compared to a Tuttle, right? I know that's a narrative that's going around. So that's a question that will have to be addressed by the quarterback, by the coach and in the quarterback room as well. But it seems like Alex has taken big strides. Like, I'm sure you guys have seen the reports. Like, it seems like they're excited about his passing ability. The dude's got all the traits in the world. And then I look at Davis Warren and Jack Tuttle as guys that are more than capable as well. So I think they're going to be all right. The question is, what's that ceiling going to be set at?
Well, they've got some weapons. The receivers, a little bit younger guys that have made big plays in big moments, but haven't done it consistently through a 12, 13, 14, 15 game schedule. But there is a guy that has done this. And Jake, you know a little bit about playing tight end, winning the Mackey Award. What are your thoughts on Colston Loveland? This guy looks like a top 10 pick, and a lot of people are kind of expecting a Brock Bowers type season out of him this year. What are your thoughts on number 18?
It should be. I think he should win the Mackey. I think he should be first team All-American. I think he should play himself into the first round. Like, you got 12 regular season games, you have a conference title, and then you have, 2 or 3 rounds of playoffs. But just off the 12 regular season games, he needs to have 6 targets a game. I think that's the base. So that's 72 targets he should have, which puts him easily, he should have a minimum of 50 catches. If I'm, calling plays for Michigan, my goal is to get Colston to that 60-plus catch range this year. I think he needs to be involved early in games, often. A big thing about tight ends is, you're introducing a new quarterback. Tight ends we line up as an extension of the offensive line. So your proximity to the quarterback is more favorable too. Like, those are more approachable, friendly, quarterback-friendly passes. So all these things tell me, like, they have got to use Colston early and often. And the good thing is I think some offensive coordinators struggle to know how to use traditional tight ends. That's not the case for Michigan. I think they will get him involved.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we've talked about that a little bit too. Even JJ did a lot of incredible things. There's no doubt about that. He was a phenomenal passer for Michigan, but the reality is they made it easy on him a lot of the time too, where they're dumping it off to Colston. They're not dumping it, but they're going short yardage to Roman, to Samaj. Like, I think that is something that Jim Harbaugh did, and he does really well with his quarterbacks. That's why he's been successful in the past. Is don't overcomplicate it. Make it very easy for your QB. There's a ton to think about. JJ is 20 years old while they're going on a national championship run. Yeah. Even though he's a unicorn of a human being and one of the greatest to ever do it here at Michigan, you still want to simplify it. So I'm hoping and thinking that that's what they're going to do for whether it's Orgy Davis or Tuttle. So, okay, flipping to the Big Ten as a whole. First of all, how the hell do you remember who's all in the Big Ten at this point? You get on BTN every day, and first of all, I hope you got a raise because you have 4 more teams that you need to scout, talk about all that stuff. But just starting with that, I'm like, I didn't think about USC maybe more than twice a year or Oregon until they played Washington. Now all of a sudden they're in our conference. So what's that like for your job specifically?
It's crazy, man. I mean, just even at Big Ten Media Days, it felt big. It just, you're walking around and wait, there's Lincoln Riley. Oh my gosh, there's Dan Lanning. There's Jed Fish coming off an 11-win Arizona season. You're talking Luke Fickell's in the conference. Oh, there's Matt Rule, Sharon Moore, right? I mean, you could just go down the list and the quality of team, this is only addition. The Big Ten was already a very healthy conference. Now this is just adding. This is just extra on top. It is such a deep conference. Part of this now looking forward, a team like Rutgers, don't need to apologize for it. Very favorable schedule. A team like Michigan, hey, buckle up. This is going to be a challenging year. Like that's going to be the reality of the Big Ten, where, a couple years you may get lucky, but most of these seasons are going to be just a brutal gauntlet. And gosh, you know what that means? You have to be able to recruit. You have to be able to develop. Guys need to be college ready sooner. They need to be mentally college ready quicker. Depth is a big piece of this. I mean, if you win a national title, that's a 16-game season. These guys are in college. Like the whole game has changed.
Other day at work. I mean, so the national championship game this year is January 20th.
Yeah, dude. I mean, I think that's after when they have to declare for the draft.
Going from August, like, it's absurd, man. It's August 31st through January 20th if you win the Natty, and it's just like, okay, this is an NFL schedule, man. That is like, anybody that's complaining about players getting paid, like, they're playing a 16-game almost NFL schedule a lot of the time. And so, and to your point with, with the gauntlet stuff, Michigan's going to play number 3 or 4 Texas week 2, and then USC week 4. Like that, that's a lot different than the schedule that we've seen for the first 4 games in the past. So, I mean, to your point, like, I think depth is going to be a really big thing for a lot of teams, which honestly, on the offensive side of the ball, is a pretty big question mark for Michigan.
Yeah, its depth is going to be critical. And this is also where coaching, there is a premium on being a coach that has fluidity. If you're rigid, you'll snap in this environment. Like Sharon, hey, smash, we want to be physical. Okay, but you got to stay healthy. Like that, you're talking Texas week 2, you're talking USC early. Remember, you still got Oregon.
Donovan 30 carries every game, right?
And you can't bang in practice either. Even you may have to bang. You may feel they weren't physical enough, but like, how do you balance? Like, there's probably not one correct answer. Like that's a big piece of this. I'm not as concerned, because assuming like we just said, I cover the conference, and I think Michigan people, or maybe media pundits, are downplaying Michigan's offensive line. And I can just tell you, I look across the conference, I look across college football, there's not a lot of great offensive lines. And even though these are a lot of new faces, these are guys, Giovanni El-Hadi has played a ton of football. Miles Hinton played a ton of football. They've been high on Greg Crippen for years, dude. They've been high on him for years. So and I could just keep going down the line. I think that offensive line is going to be quality. I think they still have 6 or 7 guys they can trust. The question is what about 8, 9, 10? I think Grant Newsom's a great coach too. So that, to me, that's still a top 3rd offensive line in the conference, certainly top half. So I'm not as concerned about that as some might be.
So from a broader perspective, one of the things you mentioned, and I think I know where the answer is going to lead to, but talking about depth, how are teams going to manage depth when guys are getting massive offers to go be a starter as a sophomore at another team, either in the same conference or a different conference? And then to your point just now, and I think it's going to lead back to culture, but Michigan has done a pretty damn good job of keeping guys in the fold like Gio, like Crippen. They've had guys that have bid their time and have waited. So, it seems Michigan's poised to be able to have that depth. But I'm just curious, Jake, moving forward in college football, like, we've got these super conferences. How are you you can't hoard 20 offensive linemen like you could back in the 90s.
Right. No, it's a great point. And I'm kind of a free market capitalist, like absolutist, in the sense where it's like, I think part of why last year was such a fun season to watch as a college football fan. It's the most parity we've ever had. And I hear Kirby Smart down in the SEC talking about depth and how it's an issue and all this. And I say, well, yeah, because you guys used to hoard all the talent. Georgia and Bama had all the talent. Now with player mobility, these guys can get compensated based on their value. And all of a sudden the talent gets dispersed. So yes, that does hurt some teams. Yes, that probably will hurt Michigan when Keon Sabb goes down to play at Alabama. He wasn't going to start before Rod Moore got hurt. Like, yes, that does hurt. But at the end of the day, like, it goes back to coaching. These coaches are getting paid a ton of money, not to do well when things are perfect. Like, you're going to have to develop some young guys. You're going to have to adjust. This is the world we're in, and it makes for a really exciting product. That's the big piece of this is, oh my goodness, God, we could go down the schedule of college football games we have this fall. It's nuts. It's like a mini professional league, and like we all benefit from that as viewers and fans of the game.
I love it. I mean, I do think this season, a lot of people have said like last season, Michigan they won the last like legitimate national championship, right? Maybe not legitimate is the word, but like there is like a turn of the page, right, to this new college football. And so, we've talked about the schedule, we've talked about all that stuff. I think it's going to be interesting also how coaches and players react to losing football games, because not many people are going to go 15-0, if any at all, right? And for us Michigan fans, this is a humble brag, but we got to get used to it a little bit. We haven't seen many losses in the past 3 years, right? And so, but how does a team, let's say Michigan would unfortunately take a loss in that Texas game, you still have a chance to make the college football playoff and win a national title. You have to bounce back. You have to be able to rally the troops, which I think just like for the, Michigans of the last 3 years, for the Bamas, the Georgias, you could go down the list. There are a lot of teams that aren't used to that are going to have to figure out, like, how do we not lose a locker room, especially in the portal and NIL era where it's like, all right, you lose week 2 to a team, and then all of a sudden some other schools call and saying, hey, we'll give you $500,000 to come over here. That sounds better when you're losing than maybe when you were winning, you were, toning that out.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you said that. That's one of the big discussion point. It should be a bigger discussion point. I completely agree with you. And I do think that's going to be a big piece of this season. To your point from the player perspective is, poaching players is going to be a problem, but also just the mental battle of the season. And, we can talk about Ohio State for an example. Their schedule, Michigan, much harder schedule. Ohio State, very favorable schedule. They feel really good about their roster. I can tell you their roster, it is loaded. I mean, make no mistake about it. They are loaded. So, but the question is we say that and say, hey, in this new model, you can afford to lose a game or two and still. But what about the mental battle for a team like that that's so talented and the expectations are so sky high? Like, what happens if they do lose? You can lose, but, juggling the mental process, again, it comes back to coaching and leadership. Like, this is why you're getting paid a ton of money to be a head coach in the college football space now. You have got to keep these guys aligned and focused from August all the way through the end of January. That is a very big challenge, especially when you're talking about college kids.
And all the money that's being floated out there, right? Like young kids coming into money. I mean, that's got to be just a mountain of a task. But to your point, Jake, these guys are making $10+ million a year. I mean, they're top percent of
I don't feel bad
in the entire world.
Fully guaranteed. Nobody, like some of them don't even have buyout clauses. It's
you can get out of a buyout sometimes if certain things happen. You can get out of a buyout.
Right? Yeah,
we schools do that.
Yeah, exactly. But imagine, gosh, some of these kids are millionaires. Imagine, like, hey, you got sociology class on Monday, and it's like you're living in your. I don't think I'm going to go to class today. I one thing just completely off the wall here. I loved living in a rundown house that we thought was going to fall over and didn't have air conditioning. And I loved scraping together money to find ways to buy a case of beer. I love that part of college. And I don't know. I've heard other programs where guys all of a sudden have money and they buy a house off campus. And it's I don't like that. I still think part of, and it's again, these guys, it's your culture. Part of this is, keeping these guys together. Yes, you got some money. Enjoy the college process still. And I think it sounds like Michigan is doing that. Those guys room together, but I just find that piece interesting too.
So maybe you would have lived in a. Oh, go ahead. You go ahead.
All right. Caleb Downs did a commercial. I can't remember what it was for, in his apartment. and it was the nicest apartment I've ever seen. Like it's like 3 stories from the looks of it. Like and I'm not gonna throw shade. Listen, if you've got the money, I'm all for guys getting paid. I'm all for doing whatever. But like to your point, Jake, like there is some growth as a human being that you need to do. Of like, I can't afford, like, I'm getting Popov this weekend because we can't afford to get Smirnoff. Right.
Yeah.
Like that, there's something that, and like that's where it better than anybody. You were in that college locker room, you're in an NFL locker room, like you grow together as boys by doing that stuff.
Yes.
By those types of nights. Like you grind together on the field and then you're idiots together off the field. Like I like that take of like the kid, I'm using Caleb Downs. I'm sure he's a great kid and probably a great teammate, but like, how close to your teammates are you going to get if you're living in a, $1.5 million condo that's 3 miles off campus?
I mean, I know, I won't name names or the program. I know there was one player that was a key player for a Big Ten team and was living with guys. His role increased, got a nice check, bought a house off campus. The guys barely ever see him. And all of a sudden, his career didn't end up on that same trajectory. And I just think that there's something to be said about that. It's one of the big challenges in the NFL too. Like that was a big wake up call as you get to the NFL and you're like, oh my gosh, this is a business. Once you get some financial stability, that's when you want to have your own place. But I look back at those times in college where, on paper, I was uncomfortable from a material standpoint. But man, those were some of the best. Like we're watching the 2016 year of sports was one of the best. We're watching LeBron come back from down 3-1. We're watching the World Series. We got no air conditioning in our house. We're sweating. It's in the summer. Those are some of the best memories I have, from my time, for my whole entire life. So hopefully those guys are finding ways to mix that in still.
So maybe you're not, purchasing real estate to live in, but do you ever think about, damn, I could have made some coin if NIL came out in 2015.
Oh yeah. Something I do think about it. It would have been nice for sure. I was outspoken though as a player. I was like really, really, really outspoken about that. I thought it was super hypocritical and ironic. I mean, I knew people were wearing 88 jerseys, and I just like, how could you logically disagree with the fact that someone was making money selling a damn butt jersey? I wasn't. That doesn't make sense on any planet. So I do think about it, but mainly my thoughts are I'm just happy these guys are getting paid.
Real quick, just want to ask Jake, on that subject, do you ever think about what your rating would have been in college football, whatever year, if it had come out when you were in college and you had the NIL going on?
I think I was a big guy. I was big into that game. And actually, there's like sickos out there. Maybe sickos. I got a lot of respect for them. They would update the entire roster.
I downloaded those every year.
Yeah.
Every year for the past 11 years till this one come out.
I think it was like a 92 or a 93, which I'll take. They probably had me faster than I truly was, but I think I was right about there. That works for me.
We'll take that for sure. I think, we kind of talked about that on one of our recent podcasts too. Like, how sick would it have been? I mean, you probably did this with the downloaded rosters, but like, how sick is it for these guys to get home from playing and then they're like playing college football with their boys and they're probably dicking around, like throwing themselves in. They throw a touchdown to Crippen like at center or something like that. Like, it's got to be freaking awesome.
Jake wasn't Madden.
I wonder though, like maybe I wonder if they like. It must be fun to also play with other teams too. You know what I mean? Like it must be just like really fun to have that full experience. Or there was a clip of Donovan. Donovan was playing some creator, and the creator intercepted the ball, and then Donovan was controlling Donovan Edwards, and Donovan Edwards, the virtual Donovan Edwards, couldn't make the tackle. That is just it was such a great clip. I don't know if you guys can find it. It was hilarious though.
Oh yeah, he played a couple of those. It is pretty funny. It was funny too when he like dominated, and he's just because Donovan Edwards in the game looks like the NFL street players. He's like so big and just runs 10 yards with every step. It's unbelievable.
He run the run movement that they have. It looks just like how Donovan Edwards runs. It's crazy.
I don't know how they do that shit, man, but it's incredible. All right, back to the Big Ten. Who would be okay? You've got 27 teams that we've got to cover now at this point. It's the Big 27. But who would be a breakout team? You know, you mentioned Rutgers. I saw something today. They don't play Michigan, Michigan State, Ohio State, Penn State. Like they don't play anybody. So
I don't even think they don't play Oregon. I don't think they even play Oregon. Yeah.
It's incredible. But is there somebody, else that you're thinking, hey, they can make some noise even though this is a super deep conference?
They would probably be the team. I think like FanDuel has their over under at like 6 wins. I think they're going to smash that. I do. They're one of the more experienced teams. I feel confident they'll exceed expectations. Iowa is another team where you talk about the teams in the West and you're like, well, now the West can't, hide. Look at Iowa's schedule. They avoid their schedule is a very manageable schedule, and they have a ton of talent on defense. And it's like they're going to win 10, 11 games. Like, don't be surprised at the end of the year when Iowa is right there with the chance to play for a Big Ten championship. Well, do not be surprised, okay? I'm just telling you.
Fans, though, are going to tell you that they saw Cade McNamara go, 5 for 20 in practice the other day or some shit.
It didn't look good. Yeah. But, hey, hopefully, hopefully he's healthy and stuff. But, yeah. I also think Nebraska with this young, I really like this kid, Dylan Raiola. And I think, dude, they are not as bad of a team as their record has shown. They just have done a lot of things that bad teams do, which is turn the ball over. Like, they're literally one of the worst teams at turning the ball over. I think that's going to be drastically improved. They had like a top 20 defense last year. They return a ton of talent, like 3,000 snaps across their O-line, bunch of young receivers and tight ends. Like, I think that's a team that could make some noise in the conference as well. So, I mean, again, you could just go, I could literally rattle off and sell you on probably 10 teams that I think could, be a very solid football team this fall at a minimum.
What do you think that's going to look like when you have a team like Michigan who, obviously I'm non-conference, so we're not going to talk about Texas, but, Oregon, USC, Ohio State, and then you have a team like, Rutgers, who I think their toughest game might be USC. Iowa's toughest game is Ohio State. So they do play the Buckeyes, right? So they get one of the top dogs in the conference.
That's it, though, right? Do you have their schedule pulled up? I think that's really it.
Yeah, so for Iowa, like their second toughest game is potentially Wisconsin, Nebraska, Washington, Minnesota. I think might be a team with Darius Taylor, kid from Detroit, who's a heck of a running back. I mean, I think they potentially are fixing some of their quarterback issues they faced last year.
But it's Colorado. Not. It's the big four are Oregon, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State. Like those are the big four.
Absolutely.
And the more of that you can avoid, the better. You have a chance to succeed.
Yeah, Rutgers' schedule though is, I mean, dude,
look at that.
It's USC.
That's a Friday night. So that's a Friday night game, short week. It's a night game. It kicks off at like 11 p.m. local time, Rutgers time. So that's again a whole other piece. They'll play a game on Saturday, probably have to fly out on a Wednesday. It's a challenge.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll let you get going here. I have first of all, I'm laughing. It's just getting darker and more ominous as we go on here.
I just noticed that too.
We need to get Natalie to get you a ring light over there.
That's right. Right.
I appreciate your time for sure. I mean, that you and I could chat about this all day long. We do. The one thing I wanted to mention is the lab. You've been hosting the lab for Champion Circle with a bunch of the Michigan athletes. I think that it's amazing when you text me after every single time that we are on with a kid, and every single time, what do you say?
Just how special these guys are, right? Like we like watching them play, but it does count for something when you and I, even in the backstage in the room, we look at each other like, wow, that's an impressive young man right there. All the millions of dollars they're making, hundreds of thousands of dollars, all the pressure, these guys are grounded. That counts for something.
It does. It does.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Tanner, you got one more question for Jake?
No, I was just going to add, I watched a little bit of the start of the lab with Jack Tuttle, and that was the first thing that I thought of was just,
Yeah.
first of all, Jake, your background is just electric. Really jealous of the nice background you got going on, with the game used helmet. That's pretty sweet. But no, Jack was just the answers, man. It was just thoughtful, quick on his feet. Like, obviously a guy who's, been with a couple different college football programs at this point. You could just tell like he's got like that special quality that you mentioned. And I think you see that from a lot of the guys that you watch, this offseason content as we build up into the season. Michigan, back to culture. It's a very special group of guys. It was last year, it was in 22 and 21. And, seems that they've got that kind of same, special ingredient for 2024 as well.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. And I'm sure, you guys fans bleed maize and blue. Like, it's a different type of podcast. I think, like, me being a former player talking to current players, it leads to some interesting conversations and just easy to pop in and listen to. So I'm biased. I think it's a pretty good show though.
No, I'm obviously I help you out with it and everything behind the scenes, but it is incredible content. So go check that out for sure. So what's it? Do you game one? Do you know your assignment yet?
Going to Washington, baby, starting with a bang. Fired up. Night game, Husky Stadium. They're playing Weber State, but oh well.
It's your old OC.
Right. Gonna be crazy.
Yeah, your old OC.
Jed Fish.
Yep. Love that. So you're gonna hang out with Jed. No, that's awesome. I mean, the cool thing for you're a Chicago guy, but you're gonna see a bunch of new places this year, I have to imagine. Which is fun. So we're gonna check you out on BTN throughout the week, in studio, and then of course calling the games on Saturdays too. But hey man, appreciate your time.
Thank you.
We can do this all day long. I know, like, my favorite thing about you is that you're just like, you're a football guy through and through. Like, sometimes I'll look down at the phone and Jake and I have been just talking shop for 45 minutes. And I'm like, dude, we didn't even like, what did you call me for? Like, I don't even remember. So I appreciate that about you, because you're not faking it anytime. And so you're just a great dude, down to earth. So appreciate you coming on. Where do the people got to follow you at?
Sorry, cut out a bit there. Jay Booty, Jake Butt, Jay Booty. You can find me all platforms. And don't be shy. I do respond to, like, literally I get to every message. So hit me up.
You're the man. You're the man.
Yep.
All right. Appreciate you, Jake. For us, you can follow us at BlueBy90 on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, at BlueBy90 Podcast on YouTube, and BlueBy90.com. We appreciate you. Go Blue.
Go Blue.